We're going to be watching you from a distance. If you don't shoot them, we are going to shoot you.
Jay Dobbins, a federal agent, lived as one of them for 2 years, posing as a gun runner, witnessing their darkest secrets, and surviving by sheer instinct. This is the untold story of how one man infiltrated the Hells Angels, risking everything to bring them down from the inside.
And the threats against me and my family started stacking up. So all these people had their fingers on a murder contract for me.
Jay Dobbins, undercover legend. J. Anthony J. Bird. Dobyns is a name that strikes intrigue, respect, and awe in the world of law enforcement. Born on July 24, 1961, Dobyns grew up in Tucson, Arizona, after his family moved from Hammond, Indiana, in search of better opportunities. Dobyns' early life in Tucson was marked by athletic success, particularly in football. As a standout athlete at Saguaro High School, he earned a football scholarship to the University of Arkansas in 1980. Later, he transferred to the University of Arizona, where he excelled as a wide receiver, even being considered an All-American candidate. However, Dobyns' career trajectory took a sharp turn from football fields to the criminal underworld.
That wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
And I had to figure it out, like a lot of young people.
In 1987, he joined the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, beginning a remarkable 27-year career in law enforcement. His journey, though decorated with success, was punctuated by life-threatening experiences that tested his resolve, courage, and commitment to justice. One of the earliest and most harrowing moments of his career came just days after he began working as an ATF special agent.
Jay Bird Dobyns, retired undercover ATF agent, best known for infiltrating the Hells Angels.
On November 19, 1987, while serving an arrest warrant on a convicted felon named Brent Provestgard, Dobyns found himself taken hostage at gunpoint. In a tense standoff near Tucson Airport, Provestgard forced Dobyns into a car, demanding he drive away. Faced with what seemed like certain death, Dobyns made a split-second decision to drop the car keys, prompting Provestgard to fire a .38 caliber bullet that struck Dobyns in the lung. The other agents opened fire, killing the gunman, while Dobyns lay bleeding. His career in law enforcement barely started. He later recounted, "I got shot before I even got my first paycheck." Despite this near-fatal incident, Dobyns pressed on with his career, diving deep into some of the most dangerous undercover operations in ATF history. Over the years, he took part in more than 500 undercover operations, often risking his life to take down violent criminals. However, his most famous and dangerous mission was infiltrating the notorious Hells Angels motorcycle club during Operation Black Biscuit. Dobyns and a team of ATF agents successfully penetrated the Hells Angels, a biker gang designated by the Department of Justice as an outlaw motorcycle gang. During the infiltration, Dobyns witnessed firsthand the gang's criminal activities.
Remember, Jay Dobbins infiltrated the Hells Angels motorcycle gang,
including drug trafficking, arms deals, and violent crimes. The operation's success relied heavily on Dobyns' ability to balance his role as a federal agent with the dangerous persona he had adopted as a criminal insider. The challenges of undercover work.
I had been left out in the cold. I had been abandoned as a 25-year federal agent.
Undercover work involves assuming a false identity, which often conflicts with an agent's values and requires isolation from family and colleagues. For Dobyns, this meant constant fear of discovery while maintaining a lifestyle far from his own beliefs. The mental strain of pretending to be someone else for such a long time was nearly unbearable. Dobyns frequently turned to his ATF handler, Bayless, to ensure he maintained his mental clarity. Trying to keep your brain spinning 2 or 3 conversations ahead of time for 8 hours a time, you are physically, mentally, emotionally ripped. To do that day after day and month after month is nearly impossible. He reflected on his grueling experience. Despite developing surface-level friendships with some of the Hells Angels, Dobyns despised them. He viewed them as degenerate shitheads and was determined to bring them to justice. However, his contempt for their criminal behavior was carefully hidden to maintain his cover. Among the hardest parts of Dobyns' mission was witnessing rampant abuse within the gang. He protected his undercover partner, McGuire, from unwanted advances, but was helpless when it came to the bikers' girlfriends and wives, who were often subjected to verbal, physical, and sexual abuse. These women, known as biker girls, were described by Dobyns as having low self-esteem and willing to endure any mistreatment for the status of being associated with the gang. The abuse was not limited to the women. Dobyns witnessed brutal violence toward children. In one instance, he watched as a Hell's Angel mercilessly beat his 11-year-old son for crying after being squirted with water by other children. Bound by the demands of his undercover role, Dobyns could not intervene without risking exposure. These moments weighed heavily on him.
Jay Dobbins also put his life on the line as an undercover agent dedicated.
And he later admitted that his inability to stop such cruelty haunted him. Undercover work also took a toll on Dobyns' mental and physical health. He began drinking and smoking heavily to cope with the constant stress of his double life. In the poor neighborhood where he was embedded, local children idolized him as a successful criminal. Dobyns tried to steer them away from the outlaw biker lifestyle, urging them to focus on education. Sadly, many of the children ignored his advice, looking up to him for all the wrong reasons. The pressure of undercover life strained Dobyns' family relationships as well. His children resented his prolonged absences, and Dobyns admitted that he failed to be there for them when they needed him most. Under the cover of doing debt collection work, he would occasionally visit his family, but the sporadic visits did little to bridge the emotional distance that had grown between them. Adding to the difficulty of his mission was the animosity Dobyns faced from both the gang and its supporters once his cover was blown. He described the experience as becoming a speed bump, a target for hatred from all sides. The Hell's Angels, furious at being deceived, and their supporters, who viewed Dobyns as a traitor, turned their anger toward him. Even after the mission ended, Dobyns was met with threats and retaliation attempts. This left him constantly looking over his shoulder, knowing that the danger did not disappear just because the operation had concluded. Dobyns' relationship with his superiors also became strained. He often clashed with his boss, Zlatala, who reminded him that Dobyns was only aware of a fraction of the entire operation. Zlatala controlled the broader investigation, while Dobyns had to focus on staying alive in his day-to-day encounters with the gang. For Dobyns, the stakes were clear. Any mistake could mean death. He famously told Zlatala, "If you make a mistake, you can go back and rewrite a report and fix something. If I make a mistake, I'm going to get hit on the back of my head with a pipe." But how did Dobyns succeed in infiltrating the infamous biker gang? Infiltrating the Hell's Angels. Operation Black Biscuit was a daring undercover operation initiated in September 2001 by the ATF to infiltrate the notorious Hell's Angels motorcycle gang in Arizona. The operation began when Rudolph "Rudy" Kramer, a member of the Solo Angeles Motorcycle Club, agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for leniency after being arrested on weapons charges. Kramer, who had connections to the Solo Angeles Club in Tijuana, Mexico,
A nobody club in Tijuana, Mexico.
was in a prime position to infiltrate the Hells Angels and other outlaw motorcycle gangs. His collaboration would prove vital to the operation's success. The ATF saw an opportunity to exploit Kramer's established connections, particularly in the methamphetamine and firearms trade, and use him to gain deeper access to the Hells Angels. Kramer began dealing drugs and smuggling weapons, fabricating a story that he was arming the Solo Angeles in Mexico to combat a Mongols chapter there. This gave him credibility within the Hells Angels and other criminal circles. Alongside Kramer, a team of undercover ATF agents infiltrated the gang. Among these agents was Jay Dobbins, who assumed the alias Jay Davis,
To run side by side with the Hells Angels in Arizona.
though the gang members knew him as Jaybird. Dobbins portrayed himself as a gun runner and debt collector, working to gain the trust of key Hells Angels figures. Invitation to the clubhouse. An invitation to the clubhouse of a motorcycle gang is far more than a polite gesture. It's a declaration of intentions, a negotiation of power, and a proving ground. For Dobyns, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The call to the Mesa Clubhouse was not a mere invitation, but an ultimatum, a direct order from the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. They had grown wary of his activities within their territory, debt collections and gun running, and they wanted a face-to-face discussion about his future dealings. The Hells Angels are known for their secretive and exclusionary nature.
No, he just wrote us tickets and let us go.
Their clubhouse is more than just a gathering place. It's a fortress designed to keep outsiders and even some members of rival gangs at bay. For many, the opportunity to step inside is as rare as it is coveted. Yet for Dobyns, this was not an honor, but a necessity. He had to prove his worth and get the club's sanction if he wanted to continue his business activities under their watchful eyes. As Dobyns approached the Mesa Clubhouse, he was met with an intimidating reception. The street outside was guarded by several Hells Angels members, some visibly armed with guns and baseball bats. In Arizona, where open carry laws allow for firearms to be displayed openly, Dobyns himself was armed. His weapons were on full display, a symbol of his readiness and resilience. The situation took a tense turn when security members of the Hells Angels informed him that guns were not permitted inside the clubhouse. Dobyns, however, was firm in his stance. He refused to disarm, stating that he never took off his guns for anyone, not even the Hells Angels. His refusal was a statement of defiance and self-preservation, making it clear that he wasn't about to let anyone dictate his actions or compromise his safety. The standoff reached a critical point when one of the club's shot callers, a high-ranking member, intervened. With calm authority, he placed an arm around Dobyns' shoulder and said, "Look, I make the rules, and you can come in with your guns on." This gesture was more than just a concession. It was a subtle acknowledgement of Dobyns' standing and a sign of respect. From this initial interaction, Dobyns felt a sense of triumph. The fact that a Hells Angels shot caller had made an exception for him suggested that he was already making headway in the precarious world of motorcycle gangs. In the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, titles and positions carry significant weight. The club is organized with a president, a vice president, and a warlord who oversees weapons and defense. At the time of Dobyns' visit, the Mesa chapter was led by Bad Bob Johnston, a feared and respected figure within the club. Gaining Johnston's trust was crucial, as it would extend to other members and potentially open doors for further interactions. The path to becoming a full-patch member of the Hells Angels is not an easy one. It starts with being an associate, someone who is simply around the gang and builds relationships over time. The next stage involves prospecting, where one proves their loyalty and capability. Only after these steps might a member be considered for a full-patch status, signifying their full integration and acceptance within the club. In the Hells Angels, the patches and cuts, their vests, are more than just gear. They signify rank and identity within the club. When Dobyns was a hangaround for the Skull Valley chapter in Arizona, he wore a plain black cut with only Skull Valley on the front. As a prospect, he earned the Arizona Bottom Rocker, which is a curved patch indicating his in-training status. Full members sport the Top Rocker, Hells Angels, and the Central Death Head patch. Achieving full membership requires unanimous approval from the charter, with prospects awaiting their turn as long as needed. Gangs and rivalries. Territory has always been a critical factor in the world of motorcycle gangs. The control of land can significantly influence a gang's income and influence, making territorial disputes common among these outlaw clubs. The rivalry that Dobyns became very close to was between the Hells Angels and the Mongols Motorcycle Club. This clash, marked by violence and tension, would eventually culminate in a dramatic confrontation in a crowded casino, revealing the high stakes of biker gang rivalries. The Mongols Motorcycle Club, founded in 1969 in Montebello, California, by Hispanic Vietnam War veterans, rose quickly to prominence. They emerged partly as a response to the Hells Angels' exclusionary policies, which did not accept non-white members. The Mongols expanded aggressively, establishing chapters across Southern California, from Los Angeles to San Diego. While they engaged in various criminal activities, their primary focus was the drug trade.
Expected to be highly visible, and police will assess any potential threat to public safety on a case-by-case basis.
Which brought them into conflict with the Hells Angels, who had long dominated the California scene. The Hells Angels' dominance was symbolized by their jackets, which prominently displayed their territory. For decades, the Angels' jackets bore the name California, a declaration of their control over the entire state. This changed in 1977, when the Mongols began including California on their own jackets, a move that the Hells Angels saw as a direct challenge to their supremacy. This act of defiance ignited a brutal and bloody feud between the two gangs. The conflict first erupted violently on September 5, 1977, when two Mongols, Emerson Redbeard Morris and Raymond Jingle Smith, were ambushed and killed by Hells Angels members in Escondido, California. The attack was followed by further insults at Smith and Morris's funeral, when a red and white bouquet, the Hells Angels' colors, was placed on their gravesite. This brazen act led to more violence, including a car bombing that injured several Mongols attending the funeral. In response, the Mongols struck back hard, assassinating key Hells Angels figures in a series of retaliatory killings. The ensuing war between the two gangs lasted over a decade and involved a relentless cycle of violence. The rivalry was not only about drug turf, but also about the symbols of power and respect embodied by their jackets and their respective claims to territories. The 1990s saw a temporary truce when Hells Angels leader Sonny Barger and Mongols leadership negotiated a shared control of California, Northern California for the Angels and Southern California for the Mongols. However, this peace was short-lived. The Mongols violated the agreement by opening new chapters in San Jose, a Hells Angels stronghold, which reignited the hostilities. During this period, the Mongols expanded rapidly, absorbing street gang members from Los Angeles. These new recruits, often young and aggressive, gave the Mongols a significant numerical advantage over the older, wealthier Hells Angels. This shift in dynamics contributed to escalating tensions, leading to the infamous Laughlin River Run in April 2002, where the rivalry reached a dramatic climax. By this time, Dobyns was already working undercover, infiltrating the Hells Angels. The River Run, an annual motorcycle rally in Laughlin, Nevada, typically drew thousands of motorcycle enthusiasts.
Was filled with hundreds of motorcycles that belonged to Hells Angels members,
including many outlaws. That year, however, the event was marred by violence. Had initially kept a safe distance, but tensions flared when Mongols vandalized a display at the Golden Nugget, leading to a confrontation with police. The situation escalated when the Mongols returned to their hotel at Harrah's Casino, only to find Hells Angels members provocatively drinking at the bar. The confrontation quickly turned violent when around 30 Hells Angels armed with various weapons stormed Harrah's Casino. They were met by a similarly armed group of Mongols, and what followed was a chaotic and bloody brawl. The casino floor became a battleground, with both sides using hammers, knives, and other makeshift weapons. Security cameras captured the ferocity of the fight, which left 2 Hells Angels and 1 Mongol dead, with many others injured. The aftermath of the River Run riot saw extensive arrests and legal proceedings. Despite the clear evidence captured on camera, the strict code of silence among bikers led to limited convictions. Only a handful of individuals from both gangs faced prison time, highlighting the challenges law enforcement faced in dealing with these organizations. Gaining trust and navigating biker culture. Navigating biker culture, particularly within notorious organizations like the Hells Angels, is a delicate balance of earning trust, understanding strict codes, and staying under the radar. Dobyns recounts that he allowed members of the Hells Angels to witness him in criminal situations to avoid mud checks, which are tests designed to see if someone would lose their nerve in dangerous circumstances. These trials often involved participating in illicit activities like narcotics transactions, where Dobyns would either give or receive drugs and money, all while being closely monitored by enforcers of the gang. These were orchestrated with the help of fellow undercover officers who posed as drug dealers, making the transactions appear legitimate to the bikers. The unpredictability of these situations extended to interactions with local law enforcement as well. Dobyns was frequently stopped and beaten by police officers who were unaware of his undercover role, adding to the tension and complexity of maintaining his cover. To make things even more challenging, Dobyns admits that he wasn't as skilled of a motorcycle rider as the seasoned Hells Angels members. Riding in a tight pack, which demands intense concentration and trust in the people riding beside you, was another area where mistakes could lead to serious consequences. In a biker pack, one slip-up can cause a catastrophic chain reaction, putting everyone in danger. When it comes to earning the respect of seasoned Hells Angels members, small details can make or break your standing in their world. Dobyns learned that every interaction with a member required a specific level of respect and observance of the gang's unwritten rules. For example, when meeting a Hells Angel, it was essential to remove sunglasses and make direct eye contact. If you wore riding gloves, they had to come off before shaking hands with a member. These subtle cues are critical in biker culture, and failing to follow them could lead to reprimands or worse. Dobyns admits that he made mistakes in these situations, including slapping members on the back or touching their patches, which are seen as symbols of their identity and belonging to the gang. On occasion, these errors resulted in physical punishment. Biker culture also has a strict hierarchy when it comes to relationships, especially regarding women. Dobyns explains that there are old ladies, who are the wives or girlfriends of members, and are completely off limits to anyone outside their relationship. Attempting to pursue a relationship with an old lady would lead to severe, often violent, consequences. However, other women within the culture move freely between members. Navigating this social structure without stepping on toes is essential for anyone trying to gain and maintain trust within the gang. One of the most brutal elements of biker culture that Dobyns had to navigate was the process of removing members from the gang. Hells Angels can leave voluntarily and retain their standing, but they must relinquish all their property associated with the gang. This includes their patches, which are considered sacred, their motorcycles, and even any tattoos that signify membership. If a member leaves in bad standing, the process is far more ruthless. Dobyns was part of several property reclamations, where former members were forcibly stripped of all Hells Angels paraphernalia, sometimes through violent confrontations. It was a stark reminder of how tightly controlled the symbols of membership are within the gang. Throughout his time infiltrating the Hells Angels, Dobyns had to balance a tightrope of appearing loyal and committed to the group while secretly working against it. Every interaction was a test, and any misstep could have been deadly. The rituals, rules, and expectations of biker culture are rigid, and failing to meet them could lead to swift and brutal consequences. The importance of parties. Hells Angels parties have long been synonymous with wild, chaotic scenes, but there's more to these gatherings than meets the eye. Despite the reputation of the club, many aspects of these events serve a deeper purpose beyond simple revelry. These gatherings, which often begin spontaneously, play a crucial role in keeping the group's social connections strong. They're not just about having fun, they also serve as a time to take care of club matters and, most importantly, to assess how loyal and committed new members are. It's during these parties that the group watches closely to see if newcomers are truly ready to be part of the brotherhood, testing their dedication and ability to handle the pressures of the biker lifestyle.
This is my story and I want to tell it my way. I'm just a guy that, after 40 years, decided to make a change in his life.
While the image of brawls and reckless behavior often dominates, the truth is far more complex, and the club's social activities highlight this nuance. A common myth surrounding the Hells Angels is that every member is a drug addict. However, some members are fitness enthusiasts, taking great care of their health. These individuals eat well, get their rest, and avoid alcohol, drugs, and cigarettes. At the gatherings, culinary artistry takes center stage, with delicious meals prepared for the members to enjoy, often with a focus on quality and taste. While many members partake in liquor to enhance the party ambiance, it's not a universal rule. These events offer a relaxed space where members can socialize, talk about club matters, and catch up on each other's lives. The casual setting allows serious club business to be handled discreetly, often with discussions shifting from critical decisions to more lighthearted banter. It's the perfect balance of fun and functionality. However, while these parties are often jovial, tensions can arise, especially when outsiders fail to adhere to club rules. While there's a strict no-drug policy in place, guests must handle their behavior carefully. Failing to respect the club's protocols, such as posing as a member or wearing fake patches, could quickly lead to physical confrontations. This unpredictability is part of the party's allure, but it also reinforces the necessity for order and respect among all attendees. The criminal enterprises and money. Dobyns revealed that each charter of the Hells Angels operates independently, which means there's a considerable variation in how these groups generate income and conduct their affairs. This decentralized approach results in a spectrum of activities,
Slightest bit concerned with what my plan is.
from relatively clean operations to those deeply enmeshed in criminal enterprises. In some regions, Hells Angels charters maintain a low profile, focusing on community engagement and running legal businesses. These charters often shy away from illegal activities, preferring to build their reputations through positive contributions such as toy runs, blood drives, and other forms of community service. Their involvement in these charitable activities shouldn't be overlooked. They make meaningful contributions that benefit society in tangible ways. Conversely, other charters are more notorious for their involvement in serious criminal activities. These groups engage in narcotics trafficking, gun running, extortion, and protection rackets. The criminal side of the Hells Angels operations can be lucrative, but it is not standardized across the entire organization. Instead of a universal bank account or regular paychecks, members earn money through these illicit ventures, often keeping the majority of their earnings. Interestingly, the Hells Angels don't have a centralized system for financial distribution. There's no universal salary or paycheck system for members. Instead, individuals within the organization might run their own schemes, such as street drug sales, which allow them to pocket substantial profits. The lack of a formal payroll system means that income generation is as varied as the charters themselves. The Hells Angels also engage in legitimate business ventures that can serve as a front for their more questionable activities. The sale of Hells Angels merchandise, ranging from branded apparel to memorabilia, brings in millions of dollars annually. This aspect of their operations, while legal, is significant, highlighting the commercial success of their brand. Despite their criminal associations, it's essential to recognize the positive aspects of their public-facing activities. The charity work, community engagement, and organized events show a different side of the Hells Angels. balancing out their more controversial activities. Fake Mongol murder, risky gambit. In the world of motorcycle clubs, gaining membership is a grueling and often dangerous journey. Despite Dobyns' significant efforts and the progress made, he was still stuck in the limbo of being a mere prospect. Dobyns, eager to accelerate his path to full membership, revisited an early piece of advice.
There's a Mongol down in Mexico running his mouth, and I want to go down there and handle it.
If he encountered a Mongol, his duty was to kill them. Driven by a mix of ambition and desperation, he orchestrated a high-stakes scheme. He approached the Skull Valley Hells Angels leadership with news of a Mongol supposedly hiding out in Mexico. Dobyns was instructed that it was his responsibility to eliminate the Mongol. In a desert hideout, Dobyns and his undercover team set up a fake crime scene. They dressed a task force member as the Mongol, staged a mock murder using butcher shop materials for blood and gore, and took Polaroid photos to document the grim kill. This elaborate ruse was designed to convince the Hells Angels of Dobyns' loyalty and worthiness. The deception worked. Dobyns was granted a patch and accepted as a member of the Skull Valley Charter. However, the victory was bittersweet. Despite the initial acceptance and the bestowed cut, Dobyns' official membership was still pending an international vote, which never occurred before the case was closed. In the end, both sides of the story held some truth. Dobyns was recognized as a member locally, but never fully accepted internationally. The fallout and the aftermath. In the summer of 2008, Operation Black Biscuit came to a dramatic conclusion, marking the end of an intense and dangerous undercover operation that exposed the dark underbelly of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang.
Recognized as an organized crime syndicate,
the investigation had amassed a mountain of evidence, thousands of hours of wiretapped conversations, and a trove of physical evidence. Ultimately, 55 Hells Angels and their associates were indicted, with 16 facing serious racketeering charges under RICO statutes. While some charges were dismissed or reduced, the operation's fallout was far from over. The operation's undercover agent, Jay Dobbins, had infiltrated the gang by posing as Jaybird, a feared debt collector and gun runner. However, this revelation was a double-edged sword. Once the Hells Angels discovered Dobyns' true identity, the danger escalated dramatically. Threats against Dobyns and his family surged, with murder contracts extending through the Aryan Brotherhood and MS-13. The situation grew so dangerous that Dobyns' house was set ablaze. The personal toll of the operation was immense. Dobyns admitted to sacrificing his family life for the sake of his undercover role. His commitment to the investigation led him to neglect his family, a painful realization that he betrayed his loved ones in his quest for justice. Despite building genuine relationships with gang members, sharing casual moments like riding bikes or shooting pool, he struggled with the emotional complexities of undercover work. In the aftermath, Dobyns authored a book, No Angel, My Harrowing Undercover Journey to the Inner Circle of the Hells Angels, detailing his harrowing experiences. Ironically, his efforts to defend himself led to a lawsuit from the ATF. Seeking solace and redemption, Dobyns later found fulfillment in coaching high school football, where he dedicated himself to guiding young men and teaching them the game he cherished. His story remains a compelling testament to the personal sacrifices and complexities faced by those who operate on the fringes of the law. How do you think the personal sacrifices and risks taken by undercover officers like Jay Dobbins impact their lives and the effectiveness of their operations? Share your thoughts in the comments below.